time has come when we need to make some sort of decision about how we give battle to General Cope.
We need an engagement. A retreat west would look like cowardice in the face of Sir General Cope, who has evaded us for so long in the Highlands.
Agree more, sir. There's no way that we could order an army that is so enthusiastic and prepared as this one into any form of a retreat, and any movement westward is bound to be perceived as a retreat, even if it isn't one, sir.
And the danger is that men will hemorrhage and the army will melt before your eyes.
We can't afford desertion at this stage.
And yet the only other option we explored today that looked across that wagon road between the marshes, well, we saw how easy it was for the enemy to dislodge us with artillery from the churchyard.
One small field piece.
And how could we contemplate moving 2,500 men by such a narrow pass? The central approaches are simply out of the question.
We must close the distance either way. There's no point staying here to be fired upon by their mortar or anything.
No, indeed, and if this mortar shelling were to continue, we'd be most discomfited. But the exploration of the paths east, the easiest roads that we've been able to identify are clear, but they take us a long road through St. Germans here, and that route will surely be detected if we were to undertake that march, and it puts our backs to the border and the garrisons at Berwick and leaves the road to Edinburgh clear open.
We can't risk the capital.
Well, the further east we go, the more exposed Edinburgh becomes.
And if we lose Edinburgh, we lose the road to the Highlands. And the Highlands, as you know, is the lifeblood of our army.
We need an engagement. This is the only government army in Scotland, and with this victory we could secure the entire country for ourselves.
I think we're all agreed on that side. The issue is how do we begin that engagement and how do we approach our enemy? It's possible I may have something of a solution to this problem that would avoid that very narrow wagon way, but after our discussions earlier on today, I was speaking to some local gentlemen, one of whom lives very nearby, knows that marshy area quite well. In fact, he's hunted there virtually all his life. And he thinks that he could show us a way slightly to the east of here, which would get us through the marsh and is unlikely to be defended by government forces.
How big of a path through, do you say the
Well,
size?
it's barely 2 or 3 men wide.
There's no indication of any path that's usable by an army on any of our maps and
Well,
plans.
so much the better. It's perhaps not known then to Cope.
Is this man trustworthy? Is he loyal to our cause?
He's an Anderson. Andersons were out with your royal father in
That's
15.
Or could we send a scout to survey this pathway?
Well, I think that the answer would be to get Anderson to show us where the pathway is and perhaps be the scout himself.
Before we're too hasty, if we were to take an army, the only army that's at your Highness's disposal, and take it down this path on one man's interpretation of whether it's passable or not, surely if Mr. Anderson knows this information, then the people in Prestonpans will know this information and be having the same conversation with General Cope.
Well, perhaps a sortie to investigate whether Cope's aware of this path and has pickets on it might be more appropriate before we commit the whole army.
And it is a commitment, sir, because if we go down this path, there'll be no coming out of it again. And if there was but a single field piece at the bottom of it, if we're passing through some narrow defile and we have to at some point cross this ditch, then we could be ruined before we're even on the field.
Completely exposed because we have no way out. And it's certainly not a route for cavalry, I would suggest.
Well, I think we're convinced that the men will be expecting to be led by the Highland way.
And of course.
Yes, and the chieftains have already expressed their intent that they will be marching on foot at the head of their men. I must insist that if that is the case, then your Highness also dismounts.
Of course. Nothing less. But
And the other thing, of course, Your Highness, is you must not expose yourself unnecessarily because your death is the death of the cause.
Well, we've already seen this evening how close some of this mortar fire has come to Your Highness's positions.
well, these mortar pieces are facing towards us in the churchyard. If we were to flank around this Anderson path without the detection, we could be real close to their pieces before they could have time to readjust.
Well, the aim would be, I understand, we would approach Cope from what is currently his left flank. He would be forced to turn to face us. His field pieces would then be facing the wrong way currently. Unless he turns them round completely, they can't do us a lot of harm, if we can get there undetected.
Perhaps, Your Highness, I might propose that in order to fix their attention, most definitely on the western and central approaches, then we might, with your leave, sir, leave a detachment of the Athol Brigade on that western side, where it has been this afternoon. If perhaps during the course of the next few hours, those men were to probe that road towards that picket we observed them posting at Colonel Gardner's estate, a few shots here, a few shots there, nothing that endangers them, of course.
No, of course not.
But would allow us to fix General Coates' attention to the west.
Indeed.
And we can't take any horse on this path either, so there'll be no great waste.
We could leave fires burning up here on the ridge to give the impression that the army is still encamped up here on the ridge.
Yes. Yes. And this churchyard where we were so incommoded earlier would still be a suitable place for us to corral the horses, so that should the battle go our way on the plain, they might be able to interpose later on and
Restore order to the men after
Indeed.
a victory, of course.
There aren't that many horses to corral, so really are there?
No, indeed. But His Highness has at least and our own. Perhaps this time tomorrow we'll have more horses to worry about.
Yes.
Are we then, sir, committed to this action to have Mr. Anderson make one final reconnoitre, I would implore, before we make the motion?
We can't wait any longer. The men have been restless for so long. After Cope's evasions in the north, we have to confront him now, otherwise they'll just gain momentum on us. This is the right time for a strike.
Do we seek Lord Murray's input into this decision, sir?
I'm sure after his interventions today, Lord Murray will be satisfied for us to have concluded a plan. He's said many times to your Highness today that he has personal knowledge of this environment and this land, and yet all he's done is led us to a position from which we cannot attack our enemy.
So we ignore Lord Murray.
I would propose that we inform him that we have made the decision based on the information he has provided us.
Indeed.
It might perhaps be a sufficient.
A compromise, yes.
There is a concern I have, Your Royal Highness, that this army is as yet untested and is young. The ability to move this army now from its current position, reform into the right deployment, and then cross this boggy ground here in the darkness, and then face a battle at the end of it.
The men know their plans, sir. They know where to
Surely,
fall
sir, Highlanders spent half the year living in darkness.
Well, might I at least propose that we delay the march sufficiently long that the sun might rise by the time we are at least in a position to deploy the army?
This risks our discovery.
Perhaps so, but we know from the fires that General Cope has lit that our discovery is more or less assured as we get closer to the ditches. But if we could make the march in darkness, if we can distract them with those pickets of your own over at the Bankton end of the field, then we might yet have enough time and order to get ourselves through the defile, across the ditches, so that by the time the sun rises, and rise it will behind us, of course, then we can at least make sure that the men are deployed in some light, so that we can ensure the integrity of our lines.
Indeed. But if we march in 3 files, it will simply be a matter of turning the men to their left to present a face to the enemy in 3 ranks. So not a lot of manoeuvring is required if we can cross.
I concur. I mean, put simply, Your Royal Highness, I don't see any other options we have available in which we can force a battle.
Well, we've considered this for some hours today, sir, and we haven't come up with a better solution.
I think this may be it, gentlemen. Maybe our moment for victory.
And with Your Highness's permission, I will make out the orders and the dispositions. Perhaps, if you're content to wait even a few hours for the men to rest, we could rise by 4, and at the 4th hour, form the column to march.
And aim to be in position on the other side of the marshland of 6.
I suspect it'll be before. I think it's until we know the path, we can't be sure, but an hour and a half, and we should be there. Any longer than that, as you say, that we risk being exposed in the field. We cannot afford, once we're in that field, on that open plain, without the advantage of the slope that we secured today, we cannot afford to stand still. As soon as we're on that field, Your Highness, we must attack.
Our Highlanders know how to act quickly with aggression.
And they may not wait for orders. They may not wait for the orders once unleashed.
Well, it sounds like a plan then, gentlemen.
Excellent. Well, I shall inform Mr. Anderson, with your permission, if you might inform your
I
brigade.
will mobilise my regiment.
There is some risk to your brigade, of course, that moving those men last through to the eastern side of Trinent, you may be necessitated to move with some speed.
We'll see what befalls.
Let's see if you can do it without waking every guard dog in Trinent if you do it. Well, sir, let us hope that with this plan we have secured the foundations of a great and glorious victory for your Royal Highness.
This is a small army, this government force. These dragoons have run from us since early.
Yes, and
Why should we fear them?
their recent flight at Colbrick as well.
And as I understand it, their field pieces are not manned by trained gunners. The
Their
two
army-
things that the Highlanders fear, guns and cavalry, are probably impotent.
And that army is of new recruits as well. The finest of Hanover's troops are out on the continent doing the German lord's bidding in foreign wars.
Indeed, sir, and I'll wager that if we win this day, then the news of our victory will spread through the whole of Scotland, and all will be rising, and Edinburgh will be filled with every recruit in the
And
country.
of course to His Most Christian Majesty of France as well, which is
Indeed.
depends upon a victory.
Without whom, I suspect we
But
cannot.
remember,
expect
sire,
much
these
more.
misguided men are also your father's subjects.
We will do our best to treat them with absolute care after the victory is secured.
We have already made arrangements, Your Royal Highness, for some carriages to be laid on in Edinburgh, regardless of whom for. There will be surgeons and doctors required, and they have been ordered to be on standby. Within a few hours of news of the battle reaching us, I'm sure we'll have all the medical care that we require. Then, sir, with your leave,
Yes.
I will attend to the dispositions of the men.
Yes, to your duties, yes.